Hi, Jutta. Thank you for accepting my invitation and accepting to be on my show.
Yes, my pleasure. You've been doing this for quite some time, right?
Yeah.
So your YouTube channel seems to be quite strong. Hmm.
So I thought to tell about you and the work that you are doing to my audience.
Hmm. That's great.
So, so can you please introduce yourself to my audience?
Yeah. So my name is Jutta Eckstein, and I'm a coach, consultant, speaker, and author based in Germany. I do work worldwide, and I'm mainly in the agile space, but I do more and more about sustainability right now.
So you're an author, consultant, you're into multiple fields.
That's correct.
Awesome. So you're owner of IT communications and former objects in action.
Yeah, correct. Well, IT communication is actually something I do together with my partner, Nikolai Yusutis. He's well known in the C++ space. So,
So you're into this from long time.
yeah, well, being independent, I started in 1998. And I started working in Agile, I think that was like 97 or so, with extreme programming at the time because Agile wasn't coined yet. So, and I was working as a software developer at that time. So I started with XP and then moved on to look more into like teams and how Agile works when scaling up. That's what I did like in 2002. And then what it means to work in a distributed way. And so that was then my next step, like maybe 2005. And by the way, I always wrote about it. So in 2004, I published my first book on scaling Agile, which was the first book on that topic worldwide. And way too early. Nobody was really much interested in it way back because people just learned about Agile at the time, right?
So what made you to write the book?
Well, just because I had this experience scaling Agile and no, well, I think we were less than a handful. We were maybe three people at the time exploring this and learning about this, and we were in exchange about that. And so I just thought I want to share what I've learned, and that's what I did. So that was then my first book that I wrote. Mhm.
So what is the response that you got?
On that book, well, as I said, it was really too early. And on the other hand, at that time, not many books on Agile were actually published. So that I don't know if people can imagine that, but it was a time where the people who were working in that space, they owned all books that were available. So, and they have all read all books on Agile because these were not many really. And also we went to all Agile conferences. You can't imagine this right now because there's like probably 5 happening at the same day anywhere on Earth here. But that wasn't the case way back when. And so I wanted to share what I learned, what I also figured because it was my first book that I wrote, that by writing, it also means reflecting a lot. And so I learned a lot about what has happened as well. And I can only recommend that to everyone, no matter if you publish it later or not, or if it's maybe a blog or just a kind of a note somewhere, or it ends up in an article or as a book or in a presentation. It helps also yourself to understand better what has happened and what you learned and how that experience has changed you.
Why you want to be in agile space?
It's a difficult question. So, well, I started there because, well, I learned from Ken Beck about extreme programming, and it just sounded to me so natural, where I thought, well, this is the way to work. However, I also have to say, I don't know how much this means to everyone, but in that time, I was working with a programming language called Smalltalk, and Smalltalk has already or comes with a specific attitude how you program, and it's very close to what then got established in working in agile way. So it was more a natural fit. And the other natural fit was I was also very much involved in the patterns community. And I would say even everything around agile has started with patterns. So like starting with extreme programming, the first publication was the one called Episodes from Walt Cunningham, and it was pattern language, so several patterns put together. And the same is true with Scrum. Scrum has first been published in terms of patterns as well. And now because I had been in the patterns community, it was also more natural fit. So the the main answer is that I got involved in Agile because it was a natural way of working for me. And maybe the reason why I stayed in Agile is on the one hand still the same. And I also feel, although a lot of people are doing it right now, or they think they're doing it right now, as a whole, I think we are not benefiting fully enough. And maybe it's because people think more about tools and techniques than about principles and values, which is also a bit harder because then it means you need to do your own stuff and not just copy what somebody else did.
What made you to come into extreme programming, intense programming?
Yeah, well, extreme programming, again, it was that Kent Beck talked to me, explained it to me, his idea about extreme programming. I think it was in 97, something like that, at a conference. And it just was a natural thing for me to do. And a lot of the things like different practices were what we used in Smalltalk programming already. So it wasn't so far out for me because Smalltalk is often developed already in a very extreme programming styled way, also because the language allows that easily or enables that.
You saw the evolution of technology. So, what do you say about it?
Say it again. Um,
You saw the evolution of the technology.
ah,
So, what do you say?
that's a difficult question. I don't know. Tech, Technology is always moving on, which is good. Um, I think my main point right now, where I am right now, is that we should take more responsibility by creating new technology and how we use it by looking into what it means for sustainability. And what I mean with that is sustainability is defined or is built up on three pillars, which is a social or human aspect, an environmental aspect, and an economic aspect. And very often when we build new technologies or also when we create products just in general, we think about the economic value only, maybe a little bit about the human aspect if we think of user experience. But I think it's about time that for all technologies that we are creating and the way we are using it, we also should into account all three pillars, which includes the environmental aspect. And from the social perspective, also always having diversity and inclusion in mind and accessibility. And all of that. And I think we still think too much about, well, it's also how we often work with. We come up with our persona, and it's the typical persona for the product, and then we focus building the work around that persona, and not thinking that there are maybe other people who will have a hard time using it. And then that other aspect that I mentioned, like the environmental aspect, we still haven't really learned to just perhaps an easy example. We still haven't learned to come up with a definition of done that also ensures that the carbon footprint isn't getting any bigger with every new release.
So you are a coach. Tell me you as coach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I work as a coach in various ways. So and maybe I also have to add that I completed a master's study for business coaching. So I studied this over several years, and I do coaching on various levels. So sometimes it's the team level, so it's more team coaching and seeing how I can support the team, or sometimes it's on the individual level, and that's also in various places in the organization. So most often, if we are talking about individual levels, it's probably more management than it is like, I don't know, on the developer level also, but that could also happen. But it's more likely that it's management level or whatever. And a key thing definitely to coaching is that, well, you never ever think about telling anyone like, okay, I think you would benefit if I coach you, or so. It's always the other way around, that the people, the teams are seeking for the coach and for help via a coach. So it's always the coachees understanding that they could benefit from a coach.
Tell me you as consultant.
Well, as a consultant, it is a little bit different than as a coach. The difference is, as a consultant, you really give concrete advice, and you can also say like, well, I would do it this way, or kind of bring, maybe through workshops or so on, people to find a way how to use something new, a new technology or a different way of working or something like that. Comparing this to coaching, it is always that, well, you guide, but you also trust that the coachee has the solution. So you never advise, and that's a huge difference between consultancy and coaching. So on the one hand, you are advising, and you're maybe even kind of telling and say, okay, now let's try this at least for, I don't know, 3 months or so you can even kind of go forward with something, which you would never do as a coach. So as a coach, it's more about listening and helping the coachee to find out what they need and what they are ready to do and what they want to do, and then helping them finding a way to do that. Versus with consultancy, it's really more, okay, I've seen that pattern before in a different company or for a different team, and there we tried this and it helped, and maybe we tried this now as well here. Maybe we adjusted a little bit, but it is more directive than coaching is.
Which one you enjoyed, coaching or consulting?
I enjoy coaching much more. And I also think it's more sustainable now, in the sense more long lasting. because the coachees, no matter if it's an individual person or a team, is right from the beginning the owner of the change. So it's those people who say like, okay, now I tried this and I will do that. And of course you can still fall back, but it's more likely that it stays, that it lasts, that change will last. Than for a consultant, even more so as a trainer, it might be you teach something, but once you're gone, it's forgotten.
So, how a coach in you helped you to be a good consultant?
Mm-hmm. So what's helping me myself a lot is the exchange via peers, which I do in various ways. Conferences, of course, are always a great place where we exchange what are we doing and what's helping us and what's not. And um, also, I think the question is also good in this way that sometimes it's a mix between coaching and consulting. And because I prefer coaching, then often my way of consulting has more of a coaching aspect than a consulting aspect, because me knowing that it's more long lasting if people find the solutions themselves. So I always try to get there. And just giving you an example here. So if I'm called in, which isn't really that often anymore, but if I'm just called in for starting with Agile somewhere, and of course it's also not anymore because a lot of people are doing it already, then there could be one way I go in and say, okay, so I teach you about what Agile is about and how it's working, and then maybe we set up how it's working here. That's not my favorite style, and it would be more the directive teaching consulting style. My way of doing it, I go in and I start with a retrospective where we together learn what has been working for the people before and what they think should be kept and what was difficult and therefore should be paid attention to, and what was missing and therefore we should do this. And maybe what also didn't work at all, and so we shouldn't do it at all. And so with a retrospective, it is on the one hand me acknowledging that they have experience and they have been able to do something and produce some value, and it's not me coming in, so maybe I'm exaggerating, but coming in and saying, well, you did it all wrong and here's the actual way and that's the only right way or so this is kind of a signal that people send if they go in like that. So it's acknowledging their experience, but it's also working with that experience and transferring it to the HR way of working. And what I think always saw that when starting with a retrospective and people find out what they actually should keep and should do now or pay attention to and what they maybe should omit, what comes out here is typically an actual way of working, an actual approach. And of course, it's not one that's written up in any book, but it's one that's working for that team. And that's excellent. And so that's also what I meant when I said before. I think people too often think about specific techniques that they have to use when working in Agile way instead of looking at the values and principles that would help them to do what they need in their context.
And you, as speaker, author, trainer.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think I talked a little bit about almost all of them, probably not about speaking, but a trainer that just shared that author we started with when I said like, well, how was it about writing a book? And that's still the case for me, that it is on the one hand, I can say it's kind of a mission that I feel like there is something I really want to share and I want people to know about it. But it's also for me a reflection and a learning exercise to write. And well, I think I have maybe 5 books published by now. And still this doesn't mean that it comes easy. So often I sit on a book for quite some time, and it's not that I think, okay, now I write a book. I know there are people who are like that, and they can write a book in a year or so. That's not for me. So often I need to, I don't know, maybe give it more time also for me to reflect on it and what should it be and so on. However, what has really changed over all those years, when I think about my first 2 books, so the one published 2004 on scaling Agile, so Agile in the large, and then the next one that was published 2010, which was on distributed Agile. For the first book, self-publishing wasn't available, and I think for the second it might have just started, but I'm not sure. I think it has not, because it also means I started writing, I don't know, at least 2008, so at least 2 years before, maybe even 5 years before, because I said it takes some time for me to complete that and think it through. So when I think back and how it's working now, I really enjoy the self-publishing so much. And I do this because for me, it also is way more related to how we are all used to create software. Because if you think about a regular published book, then it means you have to have a code freeze in quotes, which is like freezing your ideas and whatever, and then you publish it. And of course, as soon as it publishes, it's like with software, you find all the bugs. And of course, you have taken good care, and there were editors and reviewers, but there's always stuff that makes it in the publication. And then it takes quite some time till the publisher says, okay, now we are ready to a second release, where you have the chance to get rid of all those mistakes. And if I'm self-publishing, well, as soon as I see a mistake, I fix it, and the next reader buying the book will have the book without that mistake, which I think is much better than just keeping it there because there was this content freeze at a given time. And so that's really something that I enjoy a lot. And also self-publishing enables me to, for example, go out early with an idea with a book. So whenever I feel like, okay, there is something that's ready, and so I can test the market, get feedback from people. There's more like a community thing. People are helping me to really bring the book out in a way that it's really good, approachable. So this is really a huge change that has happened over the last years, that this possibility of self-publishing and also, well, actually, I could even say it's not about self-publishing. A publisher could do that as well, but they don't. They don't offer this so far. The possibility to incrementally publish and to keep updating the book whenever there's something new happening. So more thinking of books also like an actual product. And now you were also asking about speaking, which is a different topic. Speaking is for me a thing that has many different aspects. So for example, now just in the mid of June, I think it starts at June 13, there is the XP conference in Copenhagen, and that's for me very much a community event. And it was also the first Agile conference worldwide starting in 2000. So it's now the 23rd time we have that conference. And I learned so much there from that community that speaking for me is also kind of a paying back in quotes. So it's kind of speaking is a give and take thing for me at times. So at a conference like that, which is a very community oriented one. Well, and then there are other conferences or other places where I'm speaking. There it's really part of my business because it is me coming in as an expert and sharing my expertise. And then it's not so much different than offering a training or consultancy or anything else. So that's that. So and that's the probably the span we are looking at. So on the one hand, we have like the community thing, and on the other hand, we have like, well, it's part of the business. And of course, you can also say maybe, and it all sits in between because going out and speaking also means people know me, know about me, know about my work, and that also makes what I'm doing probably more accessible to a broader community of people. And then with speaking, it's very similar to what I shared about writing. Because if you try to bring your learning to a stage so that you can share it and speak about it, it means you need to reflect on it and find like a red thread through it. So how can you share it in a way so people understand and can do something with it? So this is then also a way for me as a speaker in the preparation to learn to have another learning exercise of what is it what I'm sharing and what did I really learn and what is really important enough to share about that learning. So that's really a good thing, and very often speaking and writing goes hand in hand for me, because when I speak, then I get the direct feedback from the audience, and they will signal with like the questions they are asking that, oh, perhaps I should have put this part of my talk way earlier, because they are really confused because they didn't get that knowledge yet, which also means when I write, then probably that part in a book or in an article needs to go earlier. So it's also that I learn from the audience what is a good line through or what is a good flow for a session. And it is, well, with like talks, but it's definitely also with workshops where we learn together, and it tells me like what's a good sequence and a good order, and where do people have even more questions where I should go deeper than when I write.
How many books you published?
I think it's 5 that I published myself. Well, some of them co-authored. So I said already the Agile in the Large, then Agile Software Development with Distributed Teams, my first 2 books. Then I'm not sure quite the order. Then I co-authored together with Johanna Rothman. It's a little book, but very intense, on cost of delay and finding the hidden treasures of your product portfolio. And that's the real title, but it's on cost of delay. And then I published one on retrospectives for organizational change. And my most recent book is with John Buck. So we pair written that even. And that's called Company-Wide Agility with Beyond Budgeting, Open Space, and Sociocracy. And the shortcut or the acronym for that is Bossa Nova, because the B from Beyond Budgeting, and then the OS from Open Space, and the S from Sociocracy, and then A from Agile, just putting together marks that term Bossa. And so we use then Bossa Nova. Yeah, so that's the last one. Well, and then there's maybe I have a few others which I don't know, like for example, one is on pedagogical patterns, advice for educators, but these were 14 authors, so I was like one of many, and so it's also one of my books, but it's not so much that I feel the ownership for it.
So from 23 years, 9 months, you are into coaching, consulting as a speaker, author, trainer. So can I say you are into all mediums of communication with human beings as well as talking with computer?
Huh, I don't know. All is a big word. And whenever you say all, then there's probably an exception. But yeah, well, I do a lot around that. That's true. And I have to admit, I started as a developer, but I'm not working as a developer anymore. So that's kind of where I was coming from. And now I'm really on these other fields that you've mentioned, like coaching, consulting, training, and then speaking and authoring. Yeah, so that's correct.
So you're can I say you're expert in communication, like in all the professions that you are in?
Well, I don't feel like that. And the reason is that I still feel that might sound completely funny to you, especially to you. So, um, I still feel that I'm kind of a beginner in social media. Um, and there are various reasons for it. It also, on the one hand, I know it costs a lot of time, and I'm not always prioritizing it higher, and maybe I should at sometimes. So that's the one thing. Then another reason is that there is a full range of social media that I'm completely ignoring because I don't like the business model. So I'm nowhere where Mark Zuckerberg is. So I'm not on Facebook. I'm not on Instagram. I'm even not on WhatsApp. So everything owned by Zuckerberg, I'm not doing this. So, and yeah, and then probably it's mainly the time thing, and perhaps also not knowing good enough how to play there. Maybe I'm too old. I don't know.
I got you. So, do you remember you as a consultant at Integral Development, which was 97 to 98?
Yeah, I absolutely do remember that. And you know what? It's perhaps the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing. It's a really cool question that you're asking that. So at that time, I was working as a small talk developer, and we were so I joined a new team, and we were working. No, I think the team existed already. I'm not sure, but I joined a team, and we were working on risk management systems for banks, so in the financial industry. And I was working there, I don't know, let's say for 3 months or so. And then the project lead came up to me saying, well, Jutta, I don't know what it is, but since you are part of the team, a lot of things have changed for the better. And I don't know exactly what it is, but I just see that things are much better than they were before, which made for me was for me kind of an aha thing that, well, maybe as much as I enjoy developing and programming, but maybe there's also something else that I can do that I can keep in mind of that I might want to do. And so that's actually one reason why I decided to become independent, why I decided to, well, at that time, first working more as a consultant than as a developer. At the beginning, it was way more developer focused. Well, of course, because it was also the experience that I had. I didn't have a different experience. So that's really an interesting question because at Integral, it there was really that turning point for me deciding that yeah I want to try something else. And at the beginning it was more like as well next to programming, but it turned out that I really enjoy that maybe more, and it seemed to me more something I can grow with, and it's always difficult to say something like that, because of course you can also grow with developing and programming. That's absolutely a brilliant way of also personal growth, but it also depends always on the individual. And for me, I felt like I can better grow with like doing stuff like consulting or coaching, and then all the other things. So great question.
And do you remember you as consultant at Park Place, 1995 to 97, 2 years?
So it seems you want to tell everyone how old I am with all those questions. Yeah, sure. Park Place was also a really cool spot. So I'm pretty sure only elderly people know about it. So Park Place was a company that created Smalltalk. So at the time, I believe there were 3, maybe 4 companies in Smalltalk. So we had a Smalltalk compiler, even an interpreter, all those tools around that. And so we were the producer of that programming language. And well, I came to them. So this is maybe then your next question. Because I was working on a project, and that was in Smalltalk. But at that time, I was a C++ programmer, and Smalltalk was a new programming language for me. And at the beginning, I thought, oh, this is all stupid because it's not type safe and whatever, and it's completely weird and different. But then in that project, I had to use it and I had to learn it, and I really fell in love with it. I thought this is the coolest programming language on earth. And then, so, and I'm talking about BCI, just if you're thinking about that next question, how was it there? So, and then the next project was again C++. And I worked with it, but I decided that's not for me anymore. Why should I reinvent all that stuff? Like, at least there at the time, there wasn't even a date class. And so for every project, you have to create your own date class again. And I thought like, oh, why are they doing? I know now they have C++, I'm not sure, is it C++ 20 or 17, where they now have the Chrono library, which is really massive and does a lot of stuff. But that wasn't true way back then. And so I decided I don't want to work with C++ anymore. I really want to work with Smalltalk. And so I looked for really the possibility to work with Park Place, because it was the kid on the block when you talked about Smalltalk. And so that was really great. And it also was for me a great way to work way more international than I did before. It might have even started there. I started already going to conferences internationally before that, so even as a student. But with Park Place, because it was, the headquarters was in Sunnyvale, so California, and then we were the ones in Germany, and so it also meant we had to work with our colleagues, of course, in the US, and that was a kind of a new interesting experience. It maybe also sounds a bit weird here now, because it's so natural to work in international way, but at that time it was really and for me at the age, it was really cool to do that, and I learned a lot about like international culture and so on. Yeah.
So at the same place, you worked as a trainer and consultant also at Park Place,
Mm-hmm.
Digitalk, for 2 years,
Mm-hmm. That is,
1995 to 1997.
yeah, that's true. And it's good that you're mentioning Digitalk, because there was this merger going on. So these were two main players in the small talk field, Parkplace and Digitalk. And at the time I was there was then the merger between those two companies. And well, maybe first talking about training. So because it was our programming language, so we had to teach it and also the tools around that. And I was one of the trainers, especially then in Europe. And we also had that train the trainer program, which I also thought was really cool. So where we helped others to teach small talk and the tools. And the interesting part about that is that it was for me a way to bring together my first study, and that was I'm also a teacher, so I'm trained as a teacher, just regular school teacher, right? But I never worked in that way. I just finished that study and then did my next study, which was on product engineering, which is more my background I'm using right now. But that really helped me to see that my teacher's training or that degree, university degree, was still valuable, because now I could use it for teaching in IT, and that was really cool. But now your question, you also mentioned Digitalk. So the times, they were really interesting also in a way that I got to know a lot of people. So you were saying that was 95, right? I got to know a lot of people I still know and work with, and like one person that's coming to my mind right now is for example Rebecca Wirsbrock. Not sure if you know her. She's like a big child in architecture, and so she was with Digitalk at the time. And so when we merged, so we started kind of getting to know each other, and so we are still friends and see ourselves as colleagues. And then people mainly in the Scrum field, they probably know Kenny Rubin, who was in Park Place, who was a colleague of mine. He was for many years, I believe, the managing director of the Scrum Alliance, then later on. I feel like in Park Place and Digitalk, a lot was going on at the time that left the traces in our field for a long time, and you can still see them if you're aware of where stuff is coming from.
Yeah. So, you in University of Applied Sciences, Hamburg, Germany, Master of Arts, MA, Business Coaching and Change Management in 2011 to 2013?
That's not too long ago. Of course, I remember that. So there, the interesting thing was, I at that time, what did you say when I started? 2010 or 11 or so, right? Something like that. So at that
Because
time, when was it? 2000 when?
11 to 13.
Yeah, 11 to 13. Okay, yeah. So it's, well, of course, it's now 11 years, but it's I was already grown up and I had my reputation in the field and was working independently already for, I don't know, 14 years or something. And I worked already as a coach at that time. And I just felt I would like to have a better foundation for the work I'm doing. So if I say I'm working as a coach, I also want to have that theoretical background and knowing what's going on as a coach. And I didn't want to, well, on the one hand, I didn't want to look into what agile coaching is about, but I believe at the time this didn't exist even. And on the other hand, I also didn't want to do like any kind of weekend programs where then later on you call yourself a coach. So I really wanted to go back to university and learn the basics of it. And so that was the business coaching and change management master study that I completed, which was really great in many ways. And on the one hand, it was also confirmation that what I did wasn't completely wrong. And it also gave me exactly that foundation I was seeking for. It also helped me find new approaches, new methods of in what I'm using in coaching. Then what was maybe even the best was that I got to know all those people who were studying with me, and I'm not sure, maybe one was in IT, but most of them, they were not in IT, and that opened up really a new world. And it's also interesting that you're asking this right now, because just right now I'm actually working on a kind of a project together with two of my peers way back, where so we studied together and now we are doing stuff together, really. And that's great. And actually we just now have reconnected. Oh, and there wasn't so much that we had been in touch in the times between. And this is really great, and it was a great learning experience. And it was also great for me going back to school. Now I have to do the math again. So I was already, I don't know, can't say exactly, but let's say in my mid 40s. So where most of the people are not thinking about studying maybe. And so going back, that was really cool. And yeah, and also doing then the thesis and stuff like that. So it was really a great experience to have another chance to study.
And you studied at Hot School of Volkswagen University at Pollution Control Commissioner, Environmental Science, in 1991 to 1992.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that was my second study. So my first one was what I talked about already, where I completed the teachers program. So where I became a teacher. The problem there was that at the time in Germany, there was no demand for teachers, so I didn't get a job, and so I decided I want to do something else. And I had lots of ideas, but I also thought, well, now I should really do something which gives me a job afterwards. And so I decided to study. Well, the study was really called product engineering. And in the product engineering thing, that was the possibility to also get trained as a pollution control commissioner on ecological environmentalism. And the interesting thing is that part is only now helping me on what I do right now, where I look more into sustainability. Now, the product engineering part, so the studying as an engineer, that was also interesting, especially at the beginning, where, well, this might also sound completely funny to you, because at the beginning of that studies, it was only when I learned about programming, and you could even say about computers, that weird thing. And I really loved it. It was so much fun. So I really enjoyed it so much that at the time, I was thinking about maybe I should study computer science. But then I also thought, well, but this is already your second study. Maybe you should finish this and not start again something. And so I did. So I finished that. But product engineering also had, at the place where I was studying, a great possibility to put like focal points around things. And so I concentrated a lot on software development, and that was kind of the product of the product engineering. Well, I also, of course, had to have all the other courses like on mechanical engineering or electrical engineering and so on. which I actually found also helpful, because now often my clients are in such a space, and so I often learn faster their vocabulary because it's not so foreign to me, being an engineer myself. So that was good. And yeah, so I could really concentrate on learning about software development while doing the product engineering, and having the possibility also getting that trainer at as a pollution control commissioner. Yeah.
And at the same place, you studied diploma engineering, product engineering, 88 to 92.
What did I do there? Can you repeat? Sorry.
Product engineering.
Yeah, that's what I was just talking about, right? So that I did the product engineering. Yes, that's true. Mhm.
And before that, you did bachelor's degree in elementary education and teaching at PFI, PFS, Future Tech, Germany.
Yes, so that was what I talked about earlier, that my first study was becoming a teacher, and then later on I was quite happy that I could use that learnings when then becoming a trainer in IT. And then my next study was product engineering, and that's more the basis of what I'm working from, well, still now, but with the addition of the business coaching and change management, which is really the main thing that I'm doing, but still having that foundation on engineering, that's really super helpful for me. Yeah. So it's all coming together, I guess.
And you're volunteering. You have volunteered as a member of the board of directors at Agile Alliance from 2003 to 2007.
Yeah, that's true. So I'm with the Agile Alliance for really a long time, and in 2003, as you said, I got elected to the board of directors, and I worked on the board of directors for 4 years till 2007. And that was also a good experience. Like, well, at the time, I don't even know, the Agile Alliance might have been founded in the year the Agile Manifesto has been created, I believe in 2001 as well. So the Agile Alliance was kind of new at that time. So in 2003. And so we were also exploring the field, what it means to be a nonprofit, and a supporter for the community. How can we support building and growing the Agile community? And I think the Agile Alliance did really great overall. And well, it's not necessarily because what we did, well, this is almost 20 years ago, right? Um, but it's with all those people who had been working on the Agile Alliance and also making all that happening through, on the one hand, the conference, which is actually coming up in July, Agile 2022 in Nashville. I will be there, so would be happy to connect with people who hear about this. And also with all the initiatives that are going on and which have changed over time, but some of them are pretty stable. For example, one that I'm still chairing, which is about helping user groups to have speakers, or meetups to have speakers. So it's a speaker reimbursement program, but there are many different supportive initiatives that are there by the Agile Alliance. So this is really great.
And you as president and co-founder of Hilliside Europe from 2001 to 2003.
Yeah, well, Hillside, this is the Hillside Group, well, the European Hillside Group, I have to say. Um, Hillside in general is also a non-profit organization, and it's the organization that's behind everything around patterns. And so we have been talking about patterns before, how patterns are really, if you will, one pillar for Agile. And so I've been very much involved in that community, but what I said also before, and so I was also one of the people founding Hillside Europe, which then helped us to grow the community around patterns also here in Europe.
And you have two websites. Where one is about IT communication, another one is about your books.
Yeah. So I would say my main website is jeckstein.com. So that's the first character of my first name and then my last name putting together, jeckstein.com, and there is everything around what I'm doing overall. And then there's the other website, which is agilebossanova.org, which is the latest book that I co-wrote with John Buck, and it's only around that topic about the bossa nova, which is really so rich in itself because it's integrating beyond budgeting and open space and sociocracy and agile all together, and it's just a big topic. Yeah.
So, at last, as a speaker, as an author, as a consultant, as a coach, and as a person who is into communication from like 23 plus years, and also uh, who who is into programming, extreme programming. So, what is your observation about my work? Have you seen any videos of mine on YouTube?
Well, what I mainly see is that you are a person who keeps reaching out and, well, maybe also providing a space for people sharing about their careers, which helps then others to find their way for their career. So it is, I think you are an enabler for, well, perhaps really transferring career wisdom from like some people to others, and that's super interesting. It's great what you are doing here.
So, what do you say about this conversation? About my questioning? About this conversation?
About this conversation, I thought it was really interesting that you were almost following the CV. Well, and that you were looking at, well, where did I work and where then also what was my education. So, and from these two ways, and it also, well, triggered really some other stories that I have long forgotten. So this is really cool. Thanks for doing that.
So one last question. I did masters in software engineering, bachelor's in computer science and engineering. So interviewing experts like you who are already in the industry, who are into different jobs, who are into different roles, who have huge experience, who are into different parts of the world, who made things possible, and absorbing all this information from great people like you, putting in my mind, and also sharing it with my audience through my podcast or YouTube channel. So how this energy, this valuable information, this valuable content, and these solutions that you said in this conversation, like people are saying in different conversations, how this complete correction is going to helpful for me if I work in IT uh, in coming days.
I think overall it's always helping to hear from other people experiences, and if it's only, well, seeing that there are so many different ways how you can build a career or where you can be happy in your profession, that there are various different. There are as many different ways as there are people on the earth, and that's really great. That well, you're bringing this together and sharing this, and so this is kind of the answer that you're providing, and then reaching out to people through various media. So your YouTube channel, and definitely, well, I will announce it also to my people on Twitter and LinkedIn, and so that's really great. Yeah, so it's ensuring that experiences are shared.
So at last, do you want to say anything to the world who's watching and listening to us?
Well, you probably all need to listen what you really like to do, and you go about doing it and try stuff out, and don't forget to every once in a while to pause and reflect and observe what you have learned. So, and I do this through writing and speaking, and you might find a different way to do that. But pausing, reflecting on what you've learned is super important.
Can I put this video on my YouTube channel with your permission?
Sure. Yeah.
And also, can I put this audio and video clip on my podcast website, internet, social media,
Yes.
there with your permission?
Certainly. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll share your web links, your websites, this video. People who finds our video on YouTube can see you and the work that you are doing, and also the books that you have published, and also the the information that you are going to share in your social
Right. Is your audience actually more in India, or it's all over the place?
everywhere from the from
Okay.
UK, Germany, Canada,
Mhm.
Europe.
Okay. Great.
So I'll also put
Excellent.
your website links. I'll put on the screen.
Yes. Uh-huh.
They can
Yes.
see the work that you are doing. My Indian people will know what you are doing.
Well, probably not your audience. I'm not sure if they know it.
Thanks, Jutta, for your valuable time and sharing your valuable experience with my audience.
hmm Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Take care.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks. Bye. Bye-bye.